Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Megan McNeal. I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist. Today I want to talk about one of my most favorite clients. I'm going to refer to her as Cheryl. That's not her real name. Early in my career, I worked on a case with a female defendant who was charged with murder. Cheryl, at the time, was in her mid-30s. She's a woman of color. She was in her own home one evening when her ex-boyfriend came into the house without permission and began to beat her up and threaten to kill her. Cheryl ran all through the house. He was attacking her. She got away from him. She ran to the kitchen and she grabbed a knife from the butcher block. She holds the knife in front of her and tells him, "Leave, get out of my house." He continues to attack her. He's punching her in the face, and he basically impales himself on the knife. The knife slipped between a couple of his ribs into his heart, and he pulled back and he collapsed to the floor, and his blood started pumping out of his heart, and he bled out in about 8 minutes. Cheryl, I think, was in shock when it first started to happen and didn't really realize that he had impaled himself on this knife. So she sees that he's injured. She calls 911 and she's asking, help me, what do I do? Now, the 911 operator was asking questions to make the scene safe for officers and for EMTs. And so they were asking things like, how did he get stabbed? Who has the knife? Where's the person with the knife? And Cheryl was just saying, I don't know. Please help me. He's dying. He's breathing funny. Help me. And when you listen to the 911 recording, you can actually hear him with labored breathing in the background. You can hear her ex-boyfriend dying. The prosecutor in this case listened to the 911 call and believed Cheryl was being evasive with the 911 dispatcher and charged her with murder. Cheryl sat in county jail for about 2 years waiting for her trial. I first met Cheryl in county jail, where she remained for about 2 years up until her trial. And other than a citation for possession of marijuana in her 20s, at a time when marijuana was illegal, Cheryl had never been in legal trouble before, certainly not at this level. She had worked in a blue-collar job for many years, where she was adored by her fellow coworkers. She was friendly and positive. She brightened every room she entered. As part of the defense team interviewed all sorts of people in Cheryl's life, including coworkers, her supervisor, family, and friends. And they all had very similar things to say about her, that she was a pleasant, kind, funny, generous person, cheerful, caring, hardworking. Those were all the kinds of words used to describe Cheryl. And over the years I worked with Cheryl, I saw glimpses of this person, because when I saw her, she was working through the shock and grief related to the homicide and her incarceration. So for the entire first year I met with Cheryl, she came into the contact room looking despondent and exhausted. She talked about having nightmares most nights, how she would spend most of her days laying in bed crying or staring at the ceiling. She didn't really have an appetite, so she stopped eating. She lost a considerable amount of weight. During our meetings, she often made comments like, I just wish I let him beat me up. I should have let him kill me. Why did I fight back? And this is common in women I've seen over the years, women who have killed their abusive partners, that they are horrified by their own capacity for violence, even in the course of saving their own lives. They are grief-stricken that they had a role in ending someone else's life. They're traumatized by the event, and Cheryl was going through a lot of those same kind of symptoms. Cheryl's ex-boyfriend had a history of violence, including prior charges of domestic violence against other girlfriends, many of whom later recanted their allegations, which is also common in DV allegations. He had been charged with assault and robbery on other cases, and my understanding is that at the time of his death, he was being investigated for a murder during a drug distribution event. So basically a drug deal that had gone badly. When Cheryl started dating that ex-boyfriend, he started becoming physically abusive with her around 3 or 4 weeks into the relationship, and she ended it, and then she spent the next 6 months trying to avoid him as he harassed her, he called her, he followed her. He would sit outside his apartment, which was a few blocks away, and watch her walk to the bus stop, things like that. And every time she had an interaction with him, she had to be polite because she knew if she insulted him or offended him somehow, he would become violent with her. So she tried to be polite yet distant, hoping that at some point his interest in her would go away and he would start dating some other woman. In the months before trial, the prosecuting attorney told the defense attorney there were 2 jail informants who would be testifying against Cheryl. Jail informants are people who have been arrested for other crimes, and while they're waiting for their own case to go to trial or to resolve somehow, they will gather information about other people's crimes and try to use that information to get a better sentence for themselves. In this case, there were 2 jailhouse informants who had some differences in their story. For example, one said Cheryl had been bragging to people that she killed that guy because he was cheating on her and she wasn't going to put up with that. The other jail informant told prosecutors that Cheryl had killed him because he was going to break up with her and she was just, too upset about that, and that's why she ended his life. The defense knew none of that was true. The use of jailhouse informants is pretty common, so we knew we'd have to figure out what to do with these lying informants. So as we prepared for trial, the defense attorney asked me what I thought we should do about these lying state witnesses, the jailhouse informants. And at the time, this was early in my career, but I gave him advice that was essentially similar to what we do when we, psychologists, think someone might be faking mental health symptoms. So we ask about things that don't actually exist. We ask about symptoms that aren't real. That's one way we determine whether or not someone is being honest with us about their mental illness. So the advice I gave the attorney was, you could ask these witnesses about things that never happened. And that's a bit of a risk to do in front of a jury, to ask witnesses a question you don't know the answer to. You don't know what they will answer. Because it could be that these witnesses are savvy enough that they could tell their lies on the stand, and then when the defense attorney asks them about something false, they say, oh, I don't know. And that might give their lies more credibility to the jury. But this attorney took that risk, and he asked each of those witnesses, where was this man stabbed the second time? And both of those witnesses lied and made up a story about he was stabbed. She stabbed him again in the ribs. She stabbed him, many times. And the jury could see they were completely lying because the jury knew there was only one stab wound. The jury ended up acquitting Cheryl on all the charges, and she was free to go. In the months following her trial, Cheryl tried to find employment and housing, And she had difficulty because every time a background check occurred, the murder charges would show up on her record. The prosecutor would not take them off. So the defense attorney, free of charge, took the case back before the judge and asked the judge to order the prosecutor to remove the murder charges. And the prosecutor's comment was, well, she was charged with murder. The judge ordered the prosecutor to remove the murder charges from Cheryl's record, and she was able to get employment and housing pretty soon after. She is still in the same job. She, my understanding, is doing very well in her life. She's happy and content and probably very beloved by her coworkers to this day. Over the years, I've told this story to many different people in my life. And a common question I get is, why was Cheryl charged in the first place? I think that's a really good question. Why was she charged in the first place? She was in her own home. Her door was closed. She had forgotten to lock it that night. But this person entered her house without permission and assaulted her, and she defended herself. A jury clearly saw that. Why was she charged? I have my theories. What do you think? I'd be interested in your comments. So if you have an idea or some thoughts about this case, I would love to hear it. This is a very true case. It did happen. It went to trial. It's been a long time ago, but it is real. And I would really be interested in knowing what people think about why Cheryl was charged and the result of this trial. So please leave your comment below. If you're interested in more of these videos, hit like or subscribe and I will keep them coming. I have a lot of stories from my practice and I'm happy to share. Thanks for watching.